The 14th century Delhi Sultanate was a sprawling, volatile empire. Governing it required immense authority, and few rulers projected that authority quite like Sultan Alauddin Khilji. Rulers of this era operated under a massive theological constraint. The ulema, the empire's religious scholars, expected the sultan to govern strictly according to Islamic law, known as Shariat. But the reality of maintaining a medieval empire rarely aligned with strict doctrine. Surviving constant warfare, repelling invasions, and crushing internal rebellions demanded massive resources and administrative flexibility. This tension between religious idealism and state survival is perfectly captured in a famous recorded conversation preserved by the historian Ziauddin Bahrani in his text, the Tariq-e-Firuz Shahi. In it, an authoritative scholar named Qazi Musiuddin of Bayana arrives at court to lecture the sultan on his exact religious obligations regarding taxation and state wealth. Waiting for him is Sultan Alauddin Khilji, a pragmatic ruler highly skeptical of letting theologians dictate his statecraft. Their dialogue outlines exactly what happens when the rigid theories of religious law collide with the cold mechanics of keeping an empire alive. The Qazi begins by outlining the strict economic rules of Shariat. He confirms that the state is legally permitted to demand a 50% crop tax, known as kharaj, from its non-Muslim subjects. This visual ledger shows how the financial burden compounds under religious law. On top of the 50% kharaj, the state can also legally extract a religious tax called jizya, a house tax known as gari, and a pasture tax called chari. But taxation is only half the equation. The Qazi then turns to khums, the wealth looted during military campaigns. As this pie chart shows, Sharia dictates a very specific mathematical distribution for this captured wealth. By strict religious doctrine, 4/5 of all war booty must go directly to the soldiers who fought for it. The royal treasury receives only the remaining 1/5. This framework creates a structural problem for a ruling monarch. It legally extracts heavy taxes from the civilian population, but it starves the central state of war funds while pouring immense wealth into the pockets of the military class. Alauddin's response is incredibly blunt. He explicitly rejects the authority of the ulema to dictate policy, stating that he rules based solely on state necessity, regardless of whether his actions align with Shariat. The Sultan did enforce the harsh 50% kharaj tax, but not out of religious piety. He weaponized this high rate to aggressively fund his government and drain excess wealth from local chiefs who might otherwise use it to finance a revolt. To prevent tax evasion, he overhauled the administrative machinery. This grid represents his introduction of masahat, a system of strict physical land measurement. By establishing a standard unit known as the biswa, tax collectors no longer relied on arbitrary crop estimates. They based their demands on hard, undeniable geographic data. But Alauddin's ultimate defiance of religious law came in how he handled the spoils of war. Watch how the grid morphs back into our khums pie chart, but with the proportions entirely reversed. The Sultan decreed a new, mathematically illegal distribution. 4/5 of all war booty was now seized directly for the central treasury. The soldiers were left with a meager 1/5. This calculated reversal served a dual purpose. It enriched the state's war chest and kept the standing army too poor to finance an internal rebellion. By the end of this dialogue, Alauddin Khilji had successfully and publicly decoupled the administrative machinery of his empire from the strictures of religious doctrine. His new ruling philosophy rested on 3 concrete pillars: maintaining public welfare, guaranteeing state security, and absolutely suppressing internal threats. Bahrani's text provides an explicit confession of medieval realpolitik. It preserves a rare moment where a ruler admits that state survival must supersede theological doctrine. The Khilji era demonstrates that behind the grand facades of deeply religious empires, the most powerful monarchs consistently chose ruthless practical rules of their own faith to guarantee their survival.